points against Georgia all season, and now their offense seems to be clicking on all cylinders.
Long ball to the end zone. He's got a man breaking open. Touchdown! Touchdown! Arian Smith! Touchdown, Dogs!
For the Vols, it's been an up-and-down season for first-year head coach Josh Heupel, but after dropping 2 straight, they were in need of a signature win, and it's something they got last week in Lexington.
Levis back to throw. There's the out-ender intercepted in midfield to the 40, to the 30. That's going to be a touchdown for Tennessee. Alontae Taylor, he read that perfectly.
While on paper, this one's a mismatch, stranger things have happened, especially in this rivalry.
4 seconds to go. Dobbs loads up, fires long for the end zone. The pass is going to be caught by Tennessee. Tennessee wins! Caught it by Tennessee, Jawan Jennings. I don't believe I saw that.
Can the Vols pull off a massive upset and take down Georgia for the first time since their miracle in Athens? Or will the Dogs' ferocious defense continue to dominate? It's the SEC Game of the Week in Knoxville on CBS. And that is the first game we are going to pick. Brady Quinn and Danny Cannell here. I'm Chris Hassel. 20 games involving ranked teams. And Georgia, #1, kind of cruising right now, going into a real hostile environment.
This defense is the best we've seen since your alma mater, 1993. That defense only allowed, I think, about maybe 10 points per game at that point in time. They're running around 6, 7 points a game at this point. So just a dominant season so far for the Bulldogs defensively. This is a different challenge, though. And I know you're going to talk about Hendon Hooker, who's played really well this year, but I'm more interested in the atmosphere. I think Stetson Bennett's going to be under pressure. This Tennessee front seven in particular, I think, is underrated with how good they are. And of these two teams, you'd be surprised. Look, statistically speaking, Tennessee's a good rushing football team. They can get after it a little bit. So bottom line is, I don't think Tennessee wins this game, but I think they keep it within the number. Neyland's going to be rocking. I've played there, been there, done that. It is a loud environment, Danny. I think Georgia's got the work cut out for him.
I do too. I think this game's going to be interesting. And I hope Georgia gets tested. Like, I kind of wonder if Kirby Smart wants them to get tested a little bit. Like, go into at least halftime where you feel like there's some pressure on your team. Because at some point in the SEC championship game or in the playoffs, they're going to have to respond to some adversity. But Stetson Bennett has only had to complete. The most games he's completed a game is 14.
He's only thrown 21 passes. Right. In a game this year.
Right.
That's the most he's thrown.
So that still is a massive question mark, but no one has been able to score any points on their defense. But I think that changes with Tennessee. I think there's a couple things that at least help you somewhat against this massive task of going against Georgia's defense. It's tempo and it's a mobile quarterback. And Tennessee has both of those things. They go fast, so you kind of keep them on their heels a little bit. They can't set, they can't disguise. But don't get it wrong. They still have the athletes that'll be able to respond. But then you have a mobile quarterback who can get outside, who can make some things happen, who can at least get you a numbers count in the box. So I look at this game, and I'm with you. I take Tennessee in the points. I went with the over, but I like Tennessee better. The only thought process was I do think Georgia will be able to put up those points against Tennessee's defense. But I do think for the first time you'll see a team put up, probably 2 touchdowns or maybe more against this Georgia defense.
See, I'm on the other side of this one. I think under low-scoring game with both these defenses. X factor for me, it's actually Stetson Bennett's legs. Done a pretty good job maneuvering the pocket. Now he's not going to run for a ton of yards. He's the 4th leading rusher on Georgia, though. Behind that stable of running backs, he'll take off from time to time, pick up some key first down, avoid some of the pressure. That will be key in this matchup.
3:30 Eastern time on CBS in the SEC. Another big one in the SEC involving teams ranked 11 through 15. It's A&M taking on Ole Miss. A&M's number 11 in the country right now, but a few teams playing better the last month or so.
I think they're one of the most underrated teams in the country the way they're playing right now. I mean, bottom line is they're actually that old school formula for what Bama used to use about 10 years ago to win a national championship. Good defense, running the football, and you could say kind of a game manager right now as far as what Zach Calzada's been asked to do. But that's where this game's going to be won and lost. Can Ole Miss dictate to Texas A&M up front against that offensive line and against that rushing attack and stop A-Chain and stop Spiller from running the football? Put this all on Zach Calzada's shoulder. And then on the flip side, can they protect Matt Corral enough? Or is he going to carry the football 30 times like he had to versus Tennessee in order to get this win? I don't think that's happening. I think this game is won in the trenches by A&M. So I'm laying the 2.5 points here. And to me, it's a low-scoring game. Even though we know Ole Miss can put up some points, they're going to have a hard time versus Mike Elko in this defense for A&M.
Were you surprised that the number was 2.5?
Yeah, but they're on the road, and I think that plays into it a little bit.
That almost like all right, something's off here? You know, like that's why I'm actually going with the Ole Miss here, playing at home. And they've been a little bit average, but they've been banged up, coming off their bye week. And they had that really tough stretch with Auburn that they had to play. And then they kind of were just lethargic against Liberty. I think this is a game where Ole Miss looks at this one and says, all right, we have one more chance to kind of really do something special this season. And I think they get it, because I do think this offense, which we've seen Lane Kiffin put up points on almost everybody this season, I think it is in big part because of Jerry O'Neal in that backfield. But what you mentioned, I think they've also been kind of keeping Matt Corral away from contact because he has been banged up. But at this point in the season, I don't think you have that luxury. You've got to run him. And I think they're able to move the ball against Texas A&M's defense, which has been spectacular. Statistically, they're almost as good as Georgia, especially if you do common opponents. They've had an outstanding season, but I think this will be the biggest challenge for them. I think Ole Miss can keep this one close, but where I do agree with you absolutely is the under. I don't think this will be like one of those Ole Miss shootout games like it was with Tennessee or like it was with Arkansas. I think this will be a closer, lower scoring game.
Like 10 I'm telling you, they keep climbing.
Yeah.
Climbing. When it's
they
all
could
said and
sneak
done,
into the playoffs.
I don't know they're going to sneak in because they got the 2 losses right
Bama's got to lose.
Bama's got to lose.
Bama's got to lose. But even moving past that, I do think they'll end up being like a top 8 team, top 7-6 team when it's all said and done. I
like
do
last
think they're that good. Yep.
Yeah.
Just missed out on the playoff with that 1 loss last season. All right, let's move to the Big Ten, and it's Ohio State in playoff position now. Gosh, it's a scary game against a Purdue team that all they do is beat top 5 teams.
This spread looks too big for me only because I think of how Purdue has knocked off teams this season. Iowa, Michigan State, just to name those 2 big top 5 wins. But they're not playing at West Lafayette, and that does make this a little bit different. For me, my questions and where I think Purdue can cover, maybe even a backdoor cover here, is I'm suspect on Ohio State's pass coverage. I'm sorry. Look, their best cover player is Denzel Burke, but they've gotten away from playing a ton of man-to-man where they'd match him up with David Bell and have him travel with him. Now they're playing more zone, and that's not a bad thing. I think it's actually worked out well for the Ohio State defense. But the bottom line is I think Purdue will be able to take advantage, making some big plays versus that secondary, versus Ohio State, and kind of keep this thing close. And on the flip side, Karlaftis, the DN for Purdue, is one of the better edge rushers that will be in next year's draft, but in college football. Ohio State better have a plan, because those tackles and basically the entire offensive line up front, they struggle with some of that quick twitch guys, and he's one of those guys that's got a high motor and that quick twitch and get after it. So they better have a plan for Karlaftis. I think Purdue keeps this one in the number. Ohio State wins, and I also think it's going to be an under based on how this whole thing is going to play out between Ohio State and Purdue.
We are on opposite sides of the fence on this one. I think this is one of those games where Ohio State can get right in this one. You look at Purdue, they're a little bit one-dimensional with the wide receiver threat, David Bell, who's incredible. A couple games he's been over 200 yards. But I feel like Ohio State, one of the better things they've done is they've gotten multiple, keeping a too-high safety look, and they better have some safety help for whoever's on David Bell in this game. But I also think you mentioned it. George Karlaftis coming off the edge. I do think Ryan Day will have a plan for him to move away. And there's just so many ways that they can put up points on this Purdue defense that other teams have not been able to do. And it's one thing to go beat Spencer Petras and to beat Peyton Thorne, but to be able to beat C.J. Stroud with those weapons is a different story to me. So I do think that Ohio State in a higher scoring. See, I think Purdue may get some points with David Bell in the pass game, but I think this is one of those games where Ohio State just keeps pouring it on at the end. But what makes me nervous is the one thing you mentioned, is that backdoor cover.
Well, I think it's important, especially when you go back to last week. I mean, Ohio State had a hard time separating from Nebraska. Granted, in Lincoln, a different case, but Samari Torre, you saw some of the big plays from him, the big tight end, Austin Allen. You keep looking at it saying, I mean, I know the defense has made strides. It's not to me where I think it needs to be in order to really be playing in that national championship game and win it, a la going back to last year where obviously they made it, couldn't get it done. 27
straight Big Ten wins for Ohio State. Last loss, that game that we remember 2018 against the Purdue Boilermakers. Yeah, that was at West Lafayette. Moving to the Big 12. Brady, you been to Waco before?
Never been to Waco. First time.
All right.
First time.
Brady Quinn's going to be there. Baylor Bears looking to bounce back against Oklahoma. This is the biggest test of the season for the Sooners so far.
Huge test so far, in particular defensively. However, I do think TCU and the way Chandler Morris played last week, the freshman in his first start, over 530 total yards of offense alone. He gave another freshman quarterback, Caleb Williams, the game plan, man. If you can just break contain, there's some big plays to be made. And that's been the difference for Oklahoma this year is when Caleb Williams has taken over, he's been incorporated as part of that rushing attack, and he's added that element of being able to break the pocket, make big plays, and make those big throws downfield that really weren't there when Spencer Rattler was behind center. So that's the challenge is like, can you fix it in a week if you're Dave Aranda? I don't think so because you're going up not only against a better quarterback, but a better team altogether. And I think also a better play caller, no disrespect to what we saw from TCU. And so that's really the biggest difference here is I think Oklahoma gets off to a fast lead here and they don't look back. And it puts Gary Bohannon in a tough spot where he's got to basically carry that team with his arm. I don't see it happening. I'm laying the 5.5 points. I'm on the side of Oklahoma and the over. There will be a lot of points scored.
I agree with you on the over because I think what you've seen from Caleb Williams, I think this Oklahoma offense is explosive. We mentioned the game last week against TCU, and I think Oklahoma has more firepower all across the board than Chandler Morris was dealing with. So I like the over here. I need to see Oklahoma's defense like step up, and I hope they do for their sake because I think the committee's noticed it. Every one of their critics have noticed it. I just picture this as being one of those kind of like similar to the game against Texas where they gave up a bunch of points and won kind of late. I think this could be a field goal type of game. And Oklahoma's coming off a bye week. They are getting more players back defensively. They're getting yet another starting quarter back on the defensive back end. And it should be a game that Oklahoma should win and cover, but I'm a little bit more hesitant on picking them to lay the 5.5 until I actually see them do it. But I love the over here in this game.
Moving to the ACC, Danny. This is not your father's ACC. This is the marquee game of the year in the ACC between NC State and Wake.
Yep, the marquee game of the year. They're going to put it prime time on the ACC network.
Wow, battle of the Sams last week. It's the battle of the Daves this week.
That's right. That's right. Dave Clawson, Dave Dorn. So Wake Forest, I said, hey, they deserve to be high in those rankings all season long where they were undefeated. But if you listen closely, all along I said, I don't think they run the table. And their defense is a liability. Where it's not is with NC State. NC State's defense is one of the better defenses in the country. And also, Devin Leary, their quarterback, has been fantastic this year. I was talking to Bud Elliott of the Cover 3 podcast, and he's been left off the Davey O'Brien award list, which I think is a travesty because he's got 25 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions, and a big reason why NC State had their signature win against Clemson where he threw 4 touchdown passes, 2 in overtime, kind of get them over that hurdle. And I know Clemson's not that good this season, but that was a big win for them to get that monkey off their back. I think NC State is that team in the ACC that actually will end up playing in this division for the ACC championship. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Wolfpack here. And Sam Hartman's been incredible. Devin Leary's been incredible, but I think this game goes under. I do think NC State's defense is able to control the kind of tempo a little bit and slow down that Wake Forest offense. They got some weapons, though, on the outside.
There's no doubt they do. And I'm with you. I'm with your Wolfpack on this one. I've got the Wolfpack as well. I'll take the 2 points. But A.T. Perry, Jaquari Roberson, the way those guys can go and make some big plays in this offense, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a test for the NC State defense. You talked about how good they've been this year. We've talked about Leary. Think about this. He threw an interception on a Hail Mary at the end of the first half last week. That was his first one in 228 attempts. I mean, you kind of say, like, let's throw that out the window. He had 20 touchdown passes, no picks up until that point over that period of time. So he's been playing some really good football. And I think that's where, NC State will be able to put up some points. They're not going to have any issue there. It's Wake that I think is going to struggle in this matchup. And one of the biggest reasons is that slow read RPO they like to utilize, in particular when they're getting plus territory. I think NC State's going to charge that mesh point. They're going to create havoc in the backfield, and they're going to put a lot more pressure on Sam Hartman than he's faced this entire season. This is the best defense they've faced. So, like I said, I'm with you on the Wolfpack here, and I think it's the under because I do think NC State's defense is coming out to play. So, NC State might be scoring some, but not as much for Wake's side.
Lock unity.
Yeah.
There you go,
You know
guys.
what else?
What?
We need to take Hail Marys away from the quarterback interception column.
I'm with you.
I had 4 of them in my NFL career. 4. And it would if I'm under under. I think I had 32 touchdowns and 33 interceptions, somewhere around then. I would be above water at least. Yeah, I wouldn't be anywhere near to where you should be. But at least,
now that we're on the subject, I mean, tip picks.
Right, exactly.
Come on.
Let's go.
Yeah, drop balls, right. Those should count as completions, right?
No, I'm just saying they shouldn't count against us. You know, it's like, what is it, a walk? A walk, they didn't count against anything, right?
Right.
It never happened.
We do have a lock unity there with the NC State plus the 2 and the under. The winner of that game has a clear path to the ACC championship game. The guys also like Tennessee plus 20, under 55.5 in the A&M Ole Miss game, and over 62.5 in the 62 actually is the number in that Ohio State Purdue game is what Danny likes. Let's move on and pick some more from the SEC. Alabama. It's not about whether or not they win or lose. It's about whether or not they cover the 51.5. Let's take a look at the ranked SEC games. Man, Alabama, 51.5-point favorites against New Mexico State. We've already picked a couple of these games that you see with Brady Quinn and Danny Cannell. Bama money line, you have to put down $500,000 to win $100 for Alabama to beat New Mexico State. All right, let's pick them, and let's start with that one. Let's go back 2 years. These two teams played. Alabama won by 52. So that's probably why they set the line at 51.5.
I don't know why the line set at what it is. I'm on the side of Bama here. I don't know that New Mexico State will score points. It really comes down to how long the starters are in. And even when the backups come in, you got to be reassured of the fact that they're better than when New Mexico State starters are, given the way Alabama's recruit and develop and so forth. So to me, this game's not so much about that. This is more of a platform now to talk about two things. One, Will Anderson, he should be a part of the Heisman conversation. Okay, he's one of the best players in the country. He's tied for sacks, the lead in the country in sacks. He's actually leading the country in tackle for loss. He is one of the best players. We need to give Will Anderson some love for Alabama. Again, he might only play a half in this game. And then the reality is, and we saw this versus LSU last week, Danny, they've got protection issues. They have a hard time protecting Bryce Young, and as mobile as he is, as much as he erases some of those mistakes, that's going to be their Achilles heel. Their inability to consistently run the football, push people off the blocks, and be able to protect Bryce Young more often than not. He is getting hit, he's having to move, he's having to scramble way too much, considering the talent that they have up front.
That's against LSU. That's against Auburn, maybe potentially in the Iron Bowl. I don't think that comes into play against New Mexico State. But I think this game, we have to pick every game, right? So I had to make a choice on this one. I think this game screams stay away from what Brady was talking about, too. I don't think you're too confident on either side. If you really wanted to, maybe take a first-half number and lay the points, thinking Alabama gets the game in hand. I'd love to see this Alabama team where I felt really good about it. I thought this team was going to blow the doors off LSU last week, and then all of a sudden they're in this dogfight, and late there's a chance with LSU knocking on the door, and instead of kicking a field goal, they tried to go for it, which I don't have a problem with. They're trying to win the game, but that game was way closer than any of us thought, which kind of tells me that Alabama's going to come back this week, intense focus. Nick Saban's going to be all over his guys all week long, and that they'll come in. But I don't know. That 51.5 is one of these massive numbers where I just don't think it's worth the risk to take it on. I lean towards the over because, hey, if there is some garbage time and Mexico State puts up a touchdown or something, then Alabama's backups will go out there and keep scoring. I don't love either one of these. If you did, I would recommend looking at a first-half line and laying that. This is a New Mexico State team also that lost to Texas A&M 34-0 early in the year, so like that would have been a cover. But it's just I don't have a good feel on this game at all.
That's why I actually like the under better than I do the spread, because it's so massive, and I don't think Alabama's going to leave their players in long enough to get past 67 total points, because I don't think New Mexico State's going to score. I do want to ask you this. Were you surprised Alabama didn't move back after, even though a win, a close win versus LSU? Because I thought that might have been in play by the College Football Playoff Committee. Obviously, they stayed put. They're still at number 2.
The committee has made it clear they love Alabama, and they were willing to overlook it. They almost have a separate standard for Alabama. But, like, who would you have gone ahead? Oregon ahead or Cincinnati ahead? Like, They kind of put the committee,
Ohio
I think, puts them. Yeah, Ohio State.
Cincinnati's at 5 still.
But then you would have had the dynamic, and I know they did Michigan State, but for some reason they really want to honor the Ohio State, Oregon, but they can ignore other head-to-heads. You know what
that's about? That's about them foreshadowing what they're going to do later on when they do let Ohio State leapfrog Oregon, even though Oregon beat them head-to-head.
Right.
That's what I think they're already telling you they're going to do. They're just leaving some breadcrumbs for us on the way to the final rankings.
Yeah.
So the big number this week, New Mexico State plus 51.5. They are coming off their biggest win in years, though.
Yeah.
They now have a conference, heading to Conference USA. That's the big news out of Las Cruces.
I thought you were going with the quarterback change because they did switch quarterbacks not long ago.
Danny's all over it. Just one win this season, though, for New Mexico State. Let's move on to another SEC game. Mississippi State falling out of the rankings. Auburn, number 17, they're also coming off a loss. Danny, are you really not picking this one against the spread?
I'm not. I didn't have a great feel for this one. I actually like the total in this one because I think Auburn will be able to get some points up against this Mississippi State defense. And Will Rogers having a fantastic year. We know what Mike Leach's system is all about, where they usually put up points almost against anybody they play. Auburn depleted a little bit. Not depleted, dejected maybe, feeling a little bit sorry for themselves after getting their butts kicked in College Station. So I'm curious to see how they do coming back home, if they can respond to that energy. If I was going to go with one, I'd probably lean towards Mississippi State because of that, but I think it's going to be a higher scoring game and go over that 50, which is pretty low considering what Mississippi State can do offensively, and I think Auburn can do against this Mississippi State defense.
See, I'm with you on Mississippi State. I think being able to stay within that number, this should be a close game. I think it's going to be low scoring, though. I mean, I think when you look at where Auburn excels, it's obviously running the football. They base everything off of that offensively speaking, and Mississippi State hasn't been that bad against the run this season. So I think they'll be stout against the run, and they're going to force Bo Nix to have to play from the pocket, something that I think at times, I don't even know he feels comfortable doing. We see all these highlight reel plays. He gets out, he scrambles, he creates something. It's almost like he feels uneasy sitting in the pocket and playing from the pocket, and that's not how Will Rogers likes to play. He's been one of the more underrated quarterbacks in college football this year. Hasn't thrown for less than 294 yards in a game this season. He will be challenged, though, by that Auburn defense. So I think this all signals a low-scoring game between these two teams, and I'm betting on Mississippi State being able to keep it within the number. They might even outright win. I think they sneak up on teams like that this year, and maybe Auburn allows that Texas A&M team not only to beat them last week, to beat them this week, too, kind of licking some of their wounds from that tough matchup.
All right, moving on to another ranked game in the SEC. It's number 25 Arkansas. They're back in the rankings after snapping a 3-game SEC losing skid at LSU. Rivalry game, the battle for the big old golden boot.
I'm on the side of Arkansas here. I really don't have a great feel for this game. I think the under is the better play as opposed to the spread in this case. But I just think Arkansas is going to be able to get off to a fast start running the football. And if they do that, I think they play their style of game, and they'll be able to get after Max Johnson defensively, run the football, create some big plays to Treylon Burks, and that's going to be the game plan. Like that's going to be as simple as that, and it's only 2.5 points. So in this case, I'm willing to lay them. But again, I think the under of 59 is the better play.
Chris is going to be mad at me because I didn't take the total here. I just took the side of LSU. I thought LSU showed me something last week against Alabama. It's absolutely a crapshoot whether they're going to match that intensity. But coming back to Baton Rouge, I actually think that might have been a confidence boost for this team, who has kind of been incredibly up and down this season. Like, if you get the best version of LSU, I think they win this game outright and maybe by a touchdown. There's not much confidence in saying you're going to get that version. Max Johnson now did take a lot of shots. They're saying they're getting other quarterbacks reps in practice. I wonder where his psyche is. But talent-wise, across the board, athletically, LSU has better talent if they get the most of it, which I'm kind of thinking that Ed Orgeron gets like he got last week in Tuscaloosa out of his guys.
I'm wondering if last week was kind of their Super Bowl. You know, right. With everything on the horizon for LSU, we know Ed Orgeron's not going to be back there. I kind of feel like that was it. That was their best effort. They swung for the fences, didn't work out. Where does the season go from here from LSU? That's my concern with this one as well.
And where Arkansas would view this as their their signature.
Yeah, they're in the top 25. They're in the top 25. They're working their way up in the rankings in their minds.
And building a program there as well. No agreement at all, I don't believe, between Danny and Brady here. Opposite sides of everything.
Track this week. Let's see who goes head to head.
Yeah, right. There you have it. No agreement. So I could break the tie, but
put that logo right over my head.
Well, why don't you break the tie?
Look at Danny.
What do you like, Chris?
SEC there.
What do you like?
I like New Mexico State plus 51.5.
There you go.
He always likes that.
It's a big number.
Yeah. Oh, plus, he's an Iowa fan.
Yeah.
They never score.
He is a dog.
That's Conference USA's own New Mexico State we're talking about today. Coming up, Oh, we got some Big Ten football. Michigan State looking to bounce back. Penn State looking to get its season back on track at home against Michigan. All right, let's take a closer look at some Big Ten ranked matchups. There's a pick'em at the very top there, noon Eastern time. Michigan, number 6, ahead of Michigan State in the rankings. That was the big talking point on Tuesday night when they came out. Penn State just on the edge of the rankings, but not ranked in the playoff rankings. That's going to be a tough one for Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines. That is where we start with Brady Quinn and Danny Cannell. Penn State just snapped a 3-game losing skid with a win over Maryland. Big spot for Jim Harbaugh. It's not a ranked game, I guess. He has beaten Penn State, but in order to stay in that hunt, got to win it.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State probably should be ranked. When you look at some of the other teams with similar records that are ranked, I think Penn State's a better football team. And let's just say this. Look, Michigan should not be ranked ahead of Michigan State. It's a travesty that the committee decided to do that. They're contradicting themselves already. And for whatever reason, they want to say Michigan's the more complete team, at least statistically speaking. Yeah, on paper, but we saw them play. So put Michigan State ahead of Michigan. You know, as far as which team could win this game, because it's a pick'em, I could have gone either way. I think you can make a case either way. The under, to me, is the play in this game because you got 2 good defenses. This game will be won and lost on this. How the offensive line of Penn State handles David Ajovu, who's number 1 right now in the Big Ten in sacks, and Aiden Hutchinson, who's number 2 in the Big Ten in sacks. How Penn State's offensive line handles that is largely going to dictate what happens because Penn State can't run the football effectively. They like to sling it out. Mike Yurcich comes from that air raid system, so you know he's going to do that. And that could be a problem for Penn State if they can't protect Sean Clifford and he's running for his life the rest of the day. And then for Michigan, how do you handle Jahan Dotson? Every single game, he finds a way of creating 2 or 3 big plays that change the momentum of the game, usually in favor of Penn State. We saw last week over 200 yards in the way he played. So what's your plan if you're Michigan for one of the most electric players in college football in Jahan Dotson? And I think Michigan takes care of Dotson. And if they get after Clifford, and it's a close, low-scoring game and a win for the Wolverines.
Totally agree on the low-scoring game because I do think both teams are going to be committed to the run. We know Michigan is with their style of play all season long. And I think, you know, you mentioned the Michigan State game. If you go look at the success Kenneth Walker III had against Michigan's defense running the ball, I'm with you. I don't think you can protect against the pass. So you're going to be really committed to the run, almost to a fault. I think you have to be patient with that. I think you have to stay committed to it. Maybe you're not having as much success as Michigan State did. But I'm going to lean towards Penn State here because you know why? Because the committee is ridiculous. And this is a pick out of spite because you are right. Penn State is not ranked, and yet they beat the 17th ranked team and the 16th ranked team in Auburn and Wisconsin. Both of those teams they beat who are ranked this season, they have identical records, and the committee, I think, honestly, I think they forgot. Like, I think they just, like, overlooked Penn State, and then, like, somebody pointed out to them, they're like, uh-oh, let's just hope no. And we can explain it every way we want to, the way they do it. But I could not agree with you more about the committee's mixed messages that they're sending from a game we just saw transpire. They sound like fans, the committee does, because I hear fans all the time say, well, if we all know if Michigan played them again tomorrow, we're the better team, we'd beat them then. They played on the field. We saw what happened, and we're willing to forget it just a couple weeks later. It makes 0 sense to me. So I am picking Penn State out of spite, and I am totally with you on the under.
What's odd, too, is, you know, at the end of the season, we kind of start to look at the losses, too, like who you lost to, how that matters and factors in. Now, granted, with a few losses, it's a little harder to do that. But when you lose to Illinois, I think that unfortunately maybe plays a factor in some of, you know, just the optics of what that looks like. Now, granted, you know, a loss to Ohio State, that shouldn't look as bad. You know, right. Ohio State's a good football team. They're ranked where they are for a reason. But I wonder how much that played a factor into it because in other situations, we don't see it play a factor. Oregon lost. They're the only one-loss team who lost to an unranked team. I mean, let that sink in for a second. Stanford's not a good football team, so they haven't been penalized for it yet. Penn State has been. Again, we've seen the contradictions, the hypocrisy with the committee. We'll continue to see it until the very final, you know, polls put out.
But the bottom line is Michigan State, if those teams end up tied, they have the tiebreaker in the division. If Michigan State wins out, they're going to be in the Big Ten championship game. They're going to have a chance to go to the playoff. They're at home against Maryland this week, 13-point favorites.
They win this game. It depends on by how much. And this is one where I think we're on completely opposite sides because I think we feel this game's going to go different. Look, I think Michigan State's going to control this game. They're playing at home. They're going to run the football with Kenneth Walker, eat up some of the clock. Maryland's going to have a hard time stopping the run. They haven't been great against the run this year. And that's where I think Michigan State stays ahead. And that front is going to be able to get after Talia Tagovailoa. Now, even though the Michigan State secondary has struggled to give up big plays, a ton of production and yards, that will be in play. And that's why I'm saying I don't know how much Michigan State will win by. I don't know if they'll cover, but the under to me is the better play because they're going to shorten the game, play good defense, and then Maryland might find their way back into it in the end. So I'm going to lay the 13 points, but I think the under is the better play.
I totally disagree. I'm going to tell you exactly how this game unfolds. I think Kenneth Walker is still going to get his. We've seen him continue to put up numbers, even in a losing effort last week. What do you have, 147 in that game? He's still putting up big numbers. I think he continues to do so. And then a wide open Heisman Trophy race. I think it's imperative that they win this game, which I do. But you mentioned the struggling Michigan State secondary. They're not only struggling, they are the worst pass defense in the country, 130th in pass yardage that's given up. So I think Talia Tagovailoa goes up and down the field on them at will and puts up points. I think this is one of those games where Michigan State kind of late in the game just kind of keeps leaning on Kenneth Walker, pulls away, but maybe by 10. I do not see them winning by that 13.
You know what's bizarre is the fact that Michigan State's so bad on the back end, yet their front's really good. They're one of the better teams as far as getting sacks in the Big Ten. Jacob Ponashuk in particular kind of leads that group. It's a weird disconnect, like where they can get negative plays but then give up so many big plays in the passing game.
I think they practice versus Kenneth Walker and their practice against run. I mean, practicing against Peyton Thorne isn't going to actually prep you.
Oh, come on now. Reed and Naylor on the outside. Those guys are studs.
That is not a Big Ten total in that game. 62 points in that one. We've got some Big Ten games for you that have Big Ten totals, including Northwestern at Wisconsin. The total is 41 in this game. Ooh. And Wisconsin is playing really good football right now.
They're the second. You can make the second, third best defense, playing how you mix in Texas A&M to Georgia. Wisconsin's right up there. They are salty, and Northwestern's gonna have a hard time running the football, trying to find any production. I think what's been nice to see is the evolution of Graham Mertz. Started off the year really struggled. But once they found that combination of running backs with Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen, they found themselves. Danny Davis, Kendrick Pryor, good games last week, a couple nice touchdowns. We've known about Ferguson too at the tight end spot, but Mertz looks more confident. He looks more comfortable. The coaching staff is more comfortable. Let him throw the football more. So I'm actually taking the 24 points because I just don't think this game is going to be that long. It's going to be a shortened game the way both teams play. But I think Wisconsin wins by 3 touchdowns here, and that's I'm not saying anything bad about them. It's a big line, big spread for these two teams. But I think the under is the better play.
I'll give you the exact score: 42-3. Wisconsin's going to win this game.
I'm writing this down.
That is over the total, and that is a cover. Lay the points. Wisconsin showed me something. I was curious what they do against Rutgers. They went into Piscataway and absolutely blew them away, and that was a pick I had wrong last week. But I think this defense, as you mentioned, is one of the better ones in the country. And get ready for Wisconsin against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, because I think that's the way this thing is trending with the back end of this season. Northwestern is a competition. Do you guys know this? They're in a heated competition to see who has the worst offense in all of college football with UConn and Vanderbilt. They are struggling mightily, Pat Fitzgerald's squad is. So I gave you the 3. I don't even know if they get a field goal in this game. I just think this is going to be a lopsided affair. And I think Wisconsin offense has found an identity, which probably was what they are all along. We all bought into the Graham Mertz is going to be throwing it all over a little bit too much. Now they're back to running the football, physically dominating the line of scrimmage, and it's opening up some things in the pass game a little bit, but they know exactly what they are.
Looking for their 6th straight win. If they continue to win out, they will be in that Big Ten championship game. Minnesota, though, another team that controls its own fate in that division. I don't believe in Minnesota, and I don't believe Minnesota's going to go into Iowa and win because they haven't done that since the 90s. But do the Hawkeyes cover?
So you're not rowing the boat.
Not rowing the boat. I'm hoisting the pig, Floyd Rosedale.
Yeah, you are. I'm laying the 5.5 points. Look, the Minnesota offensive line surprised me last week the way they struggled, not only to run the football, but at times, you saw Tanner Morgan pressured. They were bad on 3rd down, had a couple of turnovers. And this Iowa front and defense is much better. So that's a problem. Alex Padilla came in, gave the offense a little bit of a spark.
He had a pulse at quarterback.
Which are your words, not mine. But it did spark something. And Tyler Goodson went off, and I think he's going to be the big-time playmaker in this one as well. So 5.5 points. I'm going to lay that. I like that better than the over-under because this thing is set so low, Danny. I'm saying the over. Just it seems ridiculously low. I don't know that we're going to see that few scores here, but maybe it's that 17-10 ball game Big Ten football.
I know Chris knows this because there was a total in the Iowa-Wisconsin game that everybody had the same philosophy. Oh, it's only 37.5. There's no way it goes under, and guess what it did?
You both had the under
went
on that one.
under. Yes, we did. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the under here. I do think Iowa wins. How about another score for you? 16-6. How do you like that one? I think this game is going to be ugly. And how about PJ Fleck? Congrats to him for getting that new 7-year contract just before their loss last week. They locked him into the long term after losing to Bowling Green earlier in the season. I like PJ Fleck, and hey, maybe this is about recruiting his name up for up for some other jobs potentially. But man, did you really have to pay him when you did? Congrats to him for securing the bag. But in this game, I'm going with Iowa as well.
He's been owned by Kirk Ferentz early in his career, has not won.
You sound proud when you say that.
Well, look.
A proud Iowan saying that.
That's right. It's one of the things that Iowa has. Better than Minnesota, right? That's
and corn.
Yeah.
And corn.
Yeah, and we love that corn. Taking a look at the picks from Brady and Danny. They both like the Iowa Hawkeyes minus 5.5 in that game, by the way. Both like the under in the Michigan-Penn State game, the under in Maryland-Michigan State. That's a total of 62 there. No agreement on Northwestern, Wisconsin. Okay, up next, Cincinnati moved up in the playoff rankings despite maybe their worst game of the season. They're heavy favorites again this week at South Florida. All right, let's pick some AAC and ACC games. A couple of them are weeknight games. North Carolina, Pittsburgh on Thursday. Cincinnati, South Florida on Friday. Brady's Notre Dame Fighting Irish still potentially playoff position. They only have one loss, but they don't have any marquee games coming up. They don't have that big statement. Maybe Virginia. Hey. They're ranked 20th. And NC State, Wake Forest already picked that one. Marquee game in the ACC Saturday night. Let's start with the Friday nighter. Cincinnati giving 23.5 at USF, and it's a question of, are they going to show up? This is I think 3 straight games where they've been lackluster.
And Navy, Tulsa. I mean, really, you can go back to last week and even question how the end of the game figured itself out. I mean,
that call was like, it could have gone either way.
It could have gone either way, and then besides that, they missed the fact that Cincinnati was offsides. I mean, you really should have done the play over again, and they should have been closer to the goal line. So it's a great question of which team shows up. I'm betting on now, with Cincinnati being in the 5 spot, Luke Fickell convincing his team, like, hey, look, guys, this is it. Because it only takes someone slipping up, and who knows how far Alabama would drop back if they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game, if they don't lose before that point. And so this is their opportunity now to put up some of those style points, continue to win, convince the committee that you're worthy of it. So Ritter, Ford, they will carry this team versus South Florida defense that has struggled against the run this year. They give up over 210 yards per game, and they're giving up over 34 points per game. So it's not a question of if Cincinnati will win, it's by how much. And I'm laying the 23.5 points here, even though I think it'll be the under, because South Florida's offense has struggled. I don't think they're going to score much in this one.
They did put up a bunch of points last week against Houston, so I'm wondering if Jeff Scott and his offense have started to figure out something, but it's going to be tough against Cincinnati, where I do agree with you. And this is one where I hope they get it figured out, because at some point they need to impress. It's almost like, hey, wake up. You guys are right there, and the only thing that could hold you back is if you keep, putting around and not taking care of business and teams. It was 3 weeks in a row. They were, double-digit favorites, and all of them, they were really close against Tulane, I think it was, or Navy. It was Navy. They got the onside. I mean, they almost lost a couple of these games. Instead of taking care of the business, they need to start impressing, because they can't do it with a signature win. They have to do it with signature performances, and I think it does start against USF. And
problem is those signature wins came earlier on in the season, and sometimes it's easy to forget. One of those wins came against Notre Dame, and that's the only loss of the season for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Still sitting there with one loss at Virginia this week. Notre Dame given 5.5.
Really curious to see if Kyle Hamilton's back for this one. They could use him. I mean, look, Brennan Armstrong, the way this team throws the football around, they could use his versatility, his ability in the back end to be able to be a ball hawk. So that's one of the biggest questions, I think, in this matchup. But look, bottom line is Notre Dame just keeps finding ways of winning. I thought this spread would be bigger given what they've showcased this year. But whether it's Jack Cohn, Tyler Buckner in there, Kyron Williams has been a stud. Probably one of the more valuable players, one of the most fun watched players in all of college football. Yet yet we don't talk about it enough because the team's not necessarily in the hunt right now for the college football playoff. But this is a game where I'm going to lay the 5.5 points, and I think the advantage is this. Notre Dame's just a better overall talented team. I think it's going to showcase itself versus Virginia. Tommy Rees, the offensive play caller for Notre Dame, didn't lose to Bronco Mendenhall back when he was the head coach of BYU. And they haven't lost to him since he's been a coach now, and Bronco Mendenhall's been at UVA. So he understands the scheme. He understands how to counteract this high-powered passing attack. And I think Notre Dame will be able to cover the spread at 5.5, which they've done oftentimes this year. But I do think this will be a lower-scoring game, the way they're going to run the football and shorten the game.
Notre Dame went to Tallahassee, Dodge disaster.
Yeah.
Won by, what, a field goal in that game?
How many times are you going to bring
Virginia
this
Tech,
up,
they went to Blacksburg,
Yeah.
Dodge
Did they win?
disaster.
Did they win?
That North Carolina went to South Penn.
They win?
didn't dodge disaster.
No, they
won
actually
that
covered
game
that game,
handsomely.
too.
Yeah, they won that game handsomely.
How many more we got?
I think this is where they lose.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Virginia. This is their
How many weeks has he been predicting them losing?
Well, at some point, you keep shooting. Shoot or shoot. I'm going to go ahead and keep shooting my shot. Now, this does have to do.
He'll be 11-1 when it's all said and done.
This does have to depend. Brennan Armstrong, who was banged up, they had a bye week. He said he was 50% during the bye week, but he's been practicing this week. If Brennan Armstrong doesn't play, this game will get sideways. Like, go ahead and run to the window and take Notre Dame and lay the points. But Brennan Armstrong, again, another ACC quarterback who has been lighting it up all season long. Lefty is beautiful to watch his motion. I love the lefty motion. They're going to put up some points against Notre Dame. So go ahead and take Virginia in prime time, ABC. They're going to get the upset.
Yeah, it's not happening. You've called this every single week.
No, I didn't call the upset. I called the cover.
You picked Florida State. You picked Florida State the first week, and granted, alma mater pick.
They got the cover.
You picked UNC, I believe, as well.
Yeah, for the cover, not the win.
You've continually picked them to win, too. You called Florida State was going to beat them.
Did I?
Yeah.
Danny, I think you're
Wait. You owe me dinner from that game.
Yeah, because they
Still.
cover.
Yeah.
Really
Danny hasn't paid up.
That was the cover. Your alma mater didn't cover.
He hasn't paid up yet. Can you believe that?
Danny, you're 0 for your last 39. Notre Dame longest winning streak against unranked teams, 39 in a row, going for 40 in a row. Danny says it ends on Saturday night. Thursday night, Danny, another good one in the ACC, UNC and Pittsburgh. If UNC wins this game, it's chaos in the Coastal again.
Yes, which wouldn't surprise anybody the way the ACC has been. I do like Pitt in this game. I think they'll be at home. I think this is an opportunity for them to accomplish something that they haven't in quite some time. Kenny Pickett keeps rising up the ranks of the passing leader board. They're coming up with pretty prestigious names in this one. And North Carolina, they've been incredibly up and down. Sam Howell, you got to give him a ton of credit. He's still running the football all over the place. They got Ty Chandler going now. But I think Pitt, who already lost to Miami at home, I think they're still a little bit irritated by that one. I think they come out national stage, hyped up. Heinz Field will be pretty crowded. I don't know if they'll get a sellout, which speaks more about the program itself. But I think Pitt wins this game, so I'm gonna go ahead and lay the 6.5 with Pitt.
Oh, I think Pitt wins. I just don't think they win by 6.5 in this case. UNC really showed me something. I think they could have laid down. They were down 18 points last week to Wake Forest. But Sam Howell, who you're watching right here, I mean, he put this team on his back. Look, we can say whatever we want about the season he's had and where he's dropped or hasn't in the potential projections for him in the first round next year. The reality is he is the only thing they have going for this team right now that's keeping them afloat. And so I think they're going to put up a bunch of points. I think the over-1 is my play here because Kenny Pickett and Pittsburgh loves to sling that thing around. They just take shots, and he throws lasers the entire game, and that's going to be there versus UNC. But on the flip side, it's Sam Howell also fighting back. And Pitt got off to a slow start last week versus Duke. Obviously found the rhythm there in the second half to pull away. I think this is a high-scoring game where you'll see North Carolina keep this thing close and kind of more of a backdoor cover here, but definitely within the 6.5 number.
Okay, Pickett can be the all-time passing yardage leader at Pitt. You know his record he break?
Dan Marino?
No, Alex Van Pelt.
Okay.
Marino has the touchdowns. Alex Van Pelt. Name blast from the
By the way,
wow. Thursday nighter.
Kenny Pickett, if this is the battle of the top quarterbacks next year's draft, Pickett's going to be the top quarterback in my opinion.
Yeah.
The guys like Cincinnati, minus 23.5 at South Florida, and that is it. Let's look ahead to some other games. Pac-12, Big 12. Hey, congratulations, Arizona. They snapped a 20-game losing streak last week, a total of 73 in that game against Utah. Oklahoma State still only has 1 loss. And Oregon, quietly, still in that 3 spot in playoff position, 14-point favorites against Washington State. Let's start with that Washington State-Oregon game. Boy, it's been a tumultuous season for Washington State, but they've won 4 straight Pac-12 games.
They have. This one's different, though. I mean, they don't have as much talent as Oregon on anywhere in the field. They're going to have all sorts of issues trying to stop Kayvon Thibodeau, who, to be honest with you, I mean, there's a lot of hype around him, not quite as much production. But bottom line is Jaden Delorier is going to have the game of his life in order to, I even think, cover the spread. I think Oregon's going to handle them mightily. This Washington State team is kind of a middle-of-the-road, middle-of-the-pack Pac-12 team, which isn't really saying much. So I'm laying the 14 points here, and I think it's the under. I don't know how much Washington State will score. It's tough playing in Eugene, and I think they got their work cut out for them, Danny.
Another game. We are on opposite sides of everything. We're definitely going to have to track these because one of us is going to have a disastrous week, or we'll both end up around 500. I'm going to go ahead and take Washington State here. They have really impressed me. Since Nick Rolovich was relieved of his duties, this team kind of rallied around each other, and I think Jaden Delorier, as you mentioned, I think he's having a really good year in this system. But, like, the reason I'm going with Washington State, when was it the last, like, Oregon, I go back to the Cal game. They kind of spun around. Washington, they didn't really take control of that game until late. I would love to see Oregon just come out and show me your best. Like, go out there, Anthony Brown, have a couple touchdown passes, get Travis Dye going, complete control, start to finish, one of those kind of eye test impressors. And the committee likes what they've seen. I just have been less than impressed. I think they probably win right around the number. Maybe it's an extra, missed extra point or something where they win by 13. But I'm just going to take Washington State here as the dog because I don't really trust Oregon to kind of win big.
It is a late night, 10:30 Eastern time kickoff, Pac-12 after dark. Oregon better not be looking ahead. They go to Utah next week. The Utes, number 24, giving 24 at Arizona.
I do wonder with the fact Arizona won last week. They feel like they got some momentum, feeling better about themselves.
Who'd they beat? Well, and how many players did they have out?
6.
Yeah.
And that
6 players total available.
I'm just
for the
saying
game.
with Utah, understanding what they have next week, I do wonder if they're maybe looking ahead here. Cameron Rising's been great. He's really sparked this offense for Utah, but he's kind of fizzled the past couple of weeks. Now, fortunately, Tavion Thomas had a huge game last week, over 170 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, and that's going to be the difference. Is Utah is going to be able to stop Arizona if they even have a chance of scoring, and Utah's going to be able to run the football versus this defense. So I'm laying the 24 points. It is a big spread, especially for the style of play of Utah, and I like the under. But I think both plays will end up hitting.
Yes, we actually got some agreement on this one.
Hey.
Same exact side. Utah's front seven. Hey, Kyle Whittingham, you've got to give him a ton of credit because every single year you look at their front seven and they just got dudes. They play physical. They've usually got a pretty impressive defensive line, and yet again that's the case. Devin Lloyd, we talked about him potentially being a first-round pick yesterday, leading the Pac-12 in sacks and tackles for loss. They just get after it. In Arizona, I do think it was a big win for them. Congrats to Jed Fish, but I think it's back to reality as that bottom dweller in the Pac-12 this week. So lay the points, and I like the under as well.
All right, that's lock unity. Let's go to the Big 12. And it's not the big game in the Big 12, but it could be a sneaky good game. TCU coming off the win over Baylor at Oklahoma State, and the Cowpokes sitting there with just 1 loss.
You know, it felt like that was TCU's Super Bowl with everything with Gary Patterson and all how it worked out. Chandler Morris was phenomenal. Talked about him a little bit earlier. This is a different story, though. This is a freshman on the road, first road start, tough test in Stillwater. It's the best third-down defense you're going to find. It's the best defense in the Big 12 of limiting those 20-yard-plus plays, a lot of which we saw last week from TCU. Spencer Sanders is starting to feel a little better in the passing game. And then Jalen Warren's going to be tough to stop. For this TCU defense. So bottom line is laying the 13 points, and I think a low-scoring game under.
Give me that confetti. Come on. Oklahoma State, you meant that defense travels, too, as did Morgantown last week. Same exact reasons. You've got them. I say lay the point with Oklahoma State. And I think TCU, there's going to be some film out on Chandler Morris. They're not catching anybody by surprise. The best thing that happened for Mike Gundy was that the TCU did win last week. They'll be dialed into this team.
Yep. Just 1 loss for Oklahoma State. That was at Iowa State by 3 points. A couple other group of 5 ranked teams this week in the college football playoff rankings. It's the best of the rest. Just a couple of games here. UTSA, one of those unbeaten teams, only 4 of them left, and San Diego State with just 1 loss. Let's start with the San Diego State-Nevada game, CBS Sports Network, 10:30 Eastern time on Saturday.
Yeah, look, contrasting styles here, right? Nevada wants to air it out with Carson Strong. everyone's assuming he's going to be a first-round pick potentially, and they've got the rushing attack and the defense of San Diego State. I think Nevada gets off to a fast start. They force San Diego State to get out of the shell, and they're going to have to go away from Greg Bell. So I'm betting on the arm of Carson Strong in this one. I'll take the 2.5 points, and I think because of that style of play and how it's going to win out, this will be a higher scoring game, so I'm also taking the over.
San Diego State has struggled defensively against passing quarterbacks. Jake Haener got the win earlier. I think this is a similar type of performance. I like Carson Strong in this one, but I'm on the under because I do think, you talk about teams, we talk about the academies who were committed to the run. I don't even know if the score matters with Brady Hoke. He continues to feed Bell the ball, so I think it'll be a lower scoring affair because the clock will be moving.
Comes down to big plays. There's no one better than Nevada in the Mountain West, and there's no one better defensively at stopping big plays than San Diego State.
Good game, late night, Saturday night, CBS Sports Network. Hey, congratulations to UTSA, the Roadrunners. They're heading off to the American soon. Get in the top 25 in the playoff rankings this week at number 23, one of 4 unbeatens. Big number here.
And it's a big number, but Southern Miss is awful, and I don't think they want to slow down at all. So Southern Miss won't be able to stop Sincere McCormick. I'm laying the 33 points here, and I think they hit the over because I think UTSA now is pumped up. They're in the top 25. They're going to be able to cover this, and they're going to hit the over.
I'm with you. Big news. Like, this has been a massive year for UTSA, with Traylor getting a new 7-year deal because they're moving to the American. They can afford to pay him. There's a lot of excitement around that program, but I think Southern Miss covers. 33 is a big number for me in this spot, but I do think it goes over as well.
Might be the best team against the worst team in Conference USA. All right, that is it as we picked every ranked game against the spread, recapping some of our last picks here. Agreement on Utah on the under and Oklahoma State in the under. A couple lock unities there. Also, they like Nevada plus 2.5 at San Diego State. But again, that's not in San Diego. That's in Los Angeles. Not really a home field advantage for the Aztecs there. CBS Sports Network. And the over in the UTSA Southern Miss game. All right, a month from now, the playoffs going to be set. I mean, we don't have much college football left.
I can't believe we didn't pick Florida State, Miami. I'm still irritated by that.
Who would you pick?
Who do you think? Knowles are going to win.
I'm taking Miami. I'm taking Miami, baby. They're on a roll right now.
Tyler Van Dyke's real.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.